This week, we get none other than Charles Mingus and the album Charles Mingus came up in a rough world of Watts, L.A. Didn't fit into the black, white, or even Hispanic in his choice of music. The classical was definitely not going to fit for somebody who could not read music. All of these things combined with the fact that Mom would not let him listen to anything other than gospel music or church music in the house had stacked the deck against him. Charles Mingus rises above and becomes known as the angry man of jazz, which I would identify as a passionate man of music. With that being said, let's cue the music.
Hey, welcome back.
Hi, y'all. Welcome.
As I mentioned, Charles Mingus, the album,
But I believe that the complete title of the album is Mingus. I want to do it too. I want to say Charles Mingus. But if you look in the magazine, it's a great time for a commercial right at the beginning of the episode. We're using the JazzWise magazine's top 100 albums that shook the world. The list is from 2022. We're on number 8 tonight. So we've got 92 episodes down under our belt. But the name of the album is Mingus. And that'll come into play in the slideshow and our discussion.
Okay.
So, okay.
If you don't bring that up by the slideshow, I'm gonna jump in with that.
Okay.
Mingus, is the album that came out I had it all in front of me. It came out released October this month in 1959. It was his first recording for Columbia, which also plays a part into his in his music repertoire. We're going to talk a little bit more about a couple of things on these albums as we get into this. However, let's start with none other than some audio clips.
Yes.
And because this week I'm going to be a little selfish and take 2, I'm going to start. And then I'm going to bookend it with the second one. The first song that I really want to hear is a song that I have actually been working on to play in the trumpet. It is a tribute to someone who I have fallen in love with, Lester Young. So I'm going to start this at 1:30. We're going to listen to Goodbye Pork Pie Hat at 1:30. I don't want to stop it, but I must. I must, because we got a lot to talk about. Lester Young, to me, that was his style. So as a true tribute, who Charles Mingus decided to write just 2 months after the passing of Lester Young. So this was a tribute to the great tenor saxophone, Lester Young. And I had to go to that 1:30 because I just wanted the solo. If you could ever reach out and find the sound of that sax player, I think this was it. So it was a killer tribute.
John Handy's playing the sax on that solo. And if you'd have asked me back at episode 32, which is number 68 on our list, about John Handy, we loved listening to John then. We didn't know what was coming up, so we didn't know he was going to be on this album. And I don't even think we rabbit holed to this album that week. But what an amazing sound. That solo, the depth of feeling in that solo, even. You can feel how deep it is just based on the way he's playing there.
tip of the. I don't have my hat in here right now. Tip of the pork pie hat to Lester
pie.
Young and Charles Mingus.
So we know the story, you and I, but for the listeners, let me just tell the story real quick. That Lester always wore a pork pie hat. I mean, it was his kind of signature, and so that's why Charles named the song the way that he did, "Goodbye Pork Pie Hat," and his was called not even a pork pie; it was called something else, right?
It was actually a form of a pork pie hat. He had taken an old bowler's cap and would smash in the top, and the bowler caps would typically have a much wider brim.
Yep.
Than a fedora, and that became his style. And it was short in stature, not a fedora height, but it was a bowler cap, much like what you've got on right now, with a bigger brim.
Yeah.
And that was his style. So goodbye, pork pie hat.
Is tonight the night that I have to lose the hat?
No.
Okay, good.
No. We'll do that when we do the Long Grains tribute. Goodbye, pork pie hat. We'll have a video of it slide across the screen.
Sounds good. Dad, what'd you think of the clip? Did you have any thoughts? Goodbye, pork pie hat.
Just really, really good, smooth, melodic. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It's a good clip, very good clip.
I feel like I've heard it before, maybe in a black and white movie or in a film noir movie. You know, you see the detective sitting in his office smoking a cigarette, and the dame walks in, and they start playing that. I don't remember, what movie, but I feel like
that's into that.
Yeah.
If I find anything on it before now and this launch, I'll put something on screen right now.
Perfect. Yeah, I like it. All right, Dad, I think you're next. Which clip did you want to hear?
Pedal Point Blues.
Oh, great.
Start at 4:15, if you will, and it'll become somewhat obvious when you hear this. 4:15, Pedal Point Blues. Please.
Here we go. I was getting out of the way in case I had a firing squad when I stopped it.
Yeah, thank you. That earlier this week, I was playing this piece. Mom was in the car, and you know how much your mom loves me. She said, "Can you play it? Can you play the drums like that?" I said, "No."
You should have said, "I gave Danny Richmond lessons. He plays like me."
I said, "No, but can you play it like that?" She said, "No, but I'm not taking lessons."
You know what though? In 1959, you were a 13-year-old kid. When were you drumming?
Probably a year and a half later. I had taken some lessons and I was playing. I played at like 3 or 4 different sock hops back then with Jim and Daryl, and we just had a real good time. They were musicians, I was not, and but
you
anyway,
had 3 gigs. You were a gigging drummer.
Yeah.
Did you get paid for the sock hops?
I'm sure we did. Maybe $3 or $4 a piece. I don't,
He's a professional drummer.
yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah. I've lost some grooves since then. But didn't you love that piece? I mean, the blending,
Yeah.
the solo, and the blending before, during the solo, and then pick it up afterwards. It just blows my mind, these guys, and how perfectly they play. And so that's a big reason I chose that. It's so, to me, it's very creative and inspirational, really inspirational. So,
Well, and it just shows that, on Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, it's a slow ballad, but it still swings. On your clip, it's the up tempo, 180 to 200, 4-bar, 12 blues shuffle, 4x4, 12-bar blues shuffle. I almost feel like it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde album. Almost. There's songs on here that you can tell are depressing, and then there's your clip that's upbeat and just phenomenal.
mm-hmm.
So this is a good pick.
Yeah, thanks.
The melody on that tune is so recognizable. It gets caught in my brain.
Well, I've started to think, boy, we need this for the big band on Sunday nights. This would be a cool arrangement. But then as soon as I thought about that, we forget that he is an arranger and a composer.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote all but one of the tracks on this. I mean, Mingus isn't just, pardon me, he's not just a bass player. He was a brilliant arranger, writer, and composer. So to hear how the band comes together, such a large sound with such a small group, was phenomenal in that to me. So, Matt, what was your audio?
All right. I'd like to hear Bird Calls. And if you could start me right. Yeah, cuckoo. That's you, cuckoo. Start me right about 5 minutes, 30 seconds, which is right at the end of the song. Just let it play through the end of the tune. And I'll tell you why I picked it.
Oh, man.
So there's a couple of reasons why I picked it. Mingus, in his own words, said it's not a reference to Charlie Parker. It wasn't supposed to sound like Charlie Parker. It was supposed to sound like Birds. And besides that, the second reason I picked that clip is because it kind of reminds me of something that Maria Schneider would do with her orchestra. I can picture her writing something similar to that. You get the feeling of a flock of a murder of crows just flying every which way, and he saw it and he wrote what he saw. So I just love the clip. I loved it all week long listening to it.
It's like you said, it sounds like birds everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Coming here, coming there. Yeah.
I just love that song in general. We all three said when we began, before we hit record, that we would pick every song on the album, and any song of them, you could just randomly throw a dart at it and pick any section of the song and just say, this is what I love. So to me, it was a tough choice album to find and whittle it down. Now, I did say that I wanted a fourth, and I think it has to be noted that often Charles would cut his own bass solos out to shorten up the songs to fit on the EP. Then he also realized that if we had multiple movements in the song, we could separate those and make it two different albums. Because if you're going to commercialize it, I might as well get royalties on two different songs. So I couldn't really pick the solo that I wanted. However, The song of epic proportion to me is the protest song that Columbia refused to let them sing on. This protest about Phoebus from Arkansas. So the song Fables of Phoebus, and I'm going to start this at minute 6 to hear his bass solo come in. I'll leave it there so y'all can go check out the entire song. I feel bad not playing any of the head because the head becomes an iconic tune. It's an earwig. You'll listen to it and you'll be humming it all day long just listening to it one time. So I'll leave you to your own demise. Go listen to Fables of Phoebus. Fables of Phoebus. Orville Phoebus, the famous governor who in Arkansas said, nope, we're keeping schools segregated. It was against the U.S. Constitution, so we're going to go fight this. The lyrics are hysterical. It was a silent protest. It was a musical protest of what was going on in the 50s in Arkansas. So to me, that's why.
I read that story and I did a little research on Phoebus. Here's my problem. If you didn't do that and you just listened to the song, you wouldn't get protest from just the song. I don't get angry protests.
Nope.
I get more of a jalopy driving down the road with 4 wonky tires, and it's kind of lump, bump, bump, bump. I don't get protest from the song without lyrics.
It's funny to me because it is I would almost say a jackass walking down the street. You see a loose donkey, watching him walk, and he's kind of got this meandering way about him, like I haven't caught up with the world yet. So,
yeah.
That's what's funny to me. This is the opening of that. And you're right. 3 flat tires, the car's kind of going. There's your earwig. Now it's stuck in your head for the rest of the night.
What do you get, Dad? What do you think?
Oh, I like that. I like that description, especially after hearing it again. That's a very good description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dodo bird. Which way did they go? Which way did they go?
My name's Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
Oh, man. All right, back on track.
All
we
right.
have some information.
We got information.
So, Matt, just the facts, baby. Just the
Here
facts.
we go. Here we go. Just like we've said for 92 weeks, I'm going to say it one more time this week. Whatever you do, do it to jazz. You're going to hear in our weekend music coming up in just a little bit. That's pretty much what we do all week. We listen to jazz. One more time, we're doing Charles Mingus, the album Mingus from 1959. I did go ahead and put a picture of the artwork cover. I love it, just like I love Brubeck's artwork on his album 2-3 weeks ago. It is very fascinating to me just to kind of sit there and contemplate why he picked it. I don't know. I just love it.
Columbia was using them. This is the same artist, Neil Fujita at Columbia.
Yep.
That did Dave Brubeck's album. I was blown away by that. And last week I used a lot of Fujita's work just to show Dave Brubeck's artist. Now, it wasn't what Dave wanted, but I mean, you look at this and go, this fits 1959 perfectly.
Perfectly, yeah. But
So-
here's the thing, Brubeck had to settle for Fujita. I think
Yeah.
Mingus probably picked it on
Oh
purpose.
yeah.
So, yeah, I just love the artwork. I really do. It
So wait a
reminds me.
minute.
It reminds me of Brubeck. That's why.
Columbia.
it-
Go ahead, Dan.
Does it look at all like circus tent material?
I get that. Yes.
And maybe clowns come on in and see what we got here. Welcome. Just open the curtain here and come on. It's going to cost you some money.
That goes right along with that wonky car going down the road, that
Yeah.
clown circus thing.
Yeah.
It was 1959, Dave Brubeck, and then 59 for Mingus So that was the artwork of the day.
Yep.
In-house artist.
So I don't know. I just like it probably because it reminds me of Brubeck so much.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. The jazz style for the day has nothing to do with the album that we're talking about this week, but I do use the Wikipedia jazz style list. We're going in alphabetical order. This week's style, Indo jazz, and that is a mix of jazz with Indian music. The artist that we covered on our channel on episode number 22, Joe Harriet, the double quintet, Indo Jazz Suite. So Indo Jazz, you've heard it. If you've been listening to us, you've heard Indo Jazz on episode number 22. Cool enough. Here we go. Let's move on to the next slide. You guys are just sitting there. Where you can get it. All the major streaming platforms has tonight's album. You ask Siri to play Charles Mingus, and they will do it for you. We, of course,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, we would, of course, have you go buy it local. That's what you were going to finish up with. However, I want to put an asterisk in here. Which album are you going to get? Do you want me to talk about that now or later
Sure.
in the information?
No, yeah, let's do it.
Depending on your favorite streaming platform, you can find it on all your streaming. However, this album from 1959 wasn't what Matt found on iTunes. Matt found the legacy version, which is also listed on YouTube Music as the 50th anniversary / legacy edition. So this particular album had 9 tracks on it originally. Then, in the same or similar recording time period, they did Mingus Dynasty. And in the 50-year anniversary, they made it a legacy album and put together Mingus and Mingus Dynasty. So now you've got 2 banging CDs if you're on iTunes to listen to back to back, but it's listed as a legacy edition. Then there was another print of this in 88 prior to that, which included a few extra tracks that had been either the alternative take or had been included in that recording session but never originally released. So there are a few different blends of this.
And they had his bass solos in there.
Yes, they did. They included the full piece. And originally it was the EP. When they went to the LP for longer tracks, you could include more Mingus. And I've said it before, we're going to talk about what his deal was with the record labels, I'm sure. And it'll come up again in conversation. So I just wanted to include that. And if you're the middle son and you give dad the album, you don't put them in numerical order as they appeared on the track. They're more than likely alphabetical.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, Dad, I included some random stuff into your music.
He told me early last week that he had to go to YouTube and listen to this. So he did. I'm not even sure that this was on his phone.
It was not on correctly.
3 rando pieces.
I had 3 different advertisements. One of them was from India that made no sense to me.
And I'm a YouTube Premium subscriber. It shouldn't have been no commercials in that. That's funny.
That's
All right.
funny. All right. So let's thank you for interjecting that. I was probably going to get there anyways, but let's move on to the quote at the bottom of that slide. And we've already discussed it. You've already talked about it. Music is evidence of my soul's will to live. Now, I found it interesting because he is the angry man of jazz, but he's so, I think he's so deep and so intelligent that that's probably the only way that he could come across with his music without sounding arrogant. Maybe I don't know. Just his writing style, his depth of understanding. We'll talk about the name of the album here coming up in just a minute too. But I don't know. It's just maybe the only way that he can express himself without coming across as arrogant.
I call him passionate. He'd worked really hard to get to where he was and to do what he was doing. And he expected and wanted people to match that energy level. Match it enough that he destroyed a $20,000 bass during the middle of a session. If you can't do what I need you to do, then get the heck out of here. But it's what I needed. It's what I wanted. It's what I expected. And so I think passionate, and Matt, for you, as you said that, it hits me even harder. Depth.
Yeah.
And a knowledge and an understanding. He worked hard for it.
Right. Exactly. Dad, you got anything to add?
Nope. Right, not.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. Here we go. Let's move it on to the next slide. We'll do this year in history. Of course, 1959 we have covered in a couple of other episodes, but I've tried to find some new facts. So in 1959 was the first Boeing 707 domestic service between New York and LA. It's just interesting to me that, we think about airline travel today, how quick you can get from New York to Germany or New York to LA. And it's just 1959 is the first domestic service between New York and LA. So I just found that fact interesting. Pioneer 4 becomes the first U.S. object to escape Earth's gravity. Another cool fact. I mean, I don't know. We follow NASA a little bit in this house, not a whole lot, but it was only just 10 years later that we went to the moon in 69. So
Apollo 11. We just talked about that with Bitches Brew last week.
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact. And you think of The Right Stuff, the movie, and those pilots are testing the limits of the plane and the aircraft and everything else to get up to that high altitude. It just reminds me, this childhood memory. That movie's an awesome movie. So Pioneer 4.
Did you guys ever long to be an astronaut? Think about being an astronaut? No?
No.
And I had dreams of being an astronaut when I was a kid. I could look up to the sky and see airplanes, and I'm thinking, these guys are giving it all and prepared to go in a rocket and shoot out of the Earth's gravity. Like, I want to do that.
Yeah. So, question for another episode, but we were on the moon in 69. How's come we've never been back?
Good question.
Okay, let's move on. 1959 also was the very first annual Grammy Awards. So I found it interesting because we talk about our artists winning Grammys quite often, but 59 was the first annual Grammy Awards. Also in 59, Miles was assaulted by police between sets downtown New York at Birdland. We've probably talked about that on past episodes and how impacted that made him. I tried to include a jazz fact. Chet Baker's album Chet, Coltrane's album Bags and Train, and Kind of Blue were just some of the jazz albums released in 59. Drew, you and I call 59 the golden year of jazz because so many banging albums came out that year that they hit us on our journey. They hit us in our rabbit holes. So those are just to name a few of those special albums that came out in 59. I'll talk about Bags and Train here on my Week in Music. Lester Young, as we spoke earlier, Lester Young and Billie Holiday have passed away in 59. So that's why Charles Mingus wrote Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. Frank Lacey of Mingus's big band later, of course, and Brian Setzer were born this year. So I love Brian Setzer's music, Stray Cats and everything Brian Setzer does. He's not really a jazz musician. He's more of a swing band. I guess it's jazz, but I don't think of him as jazz. Anyways, that's just a few facts from 1959.
Let's get into this timeline.
All right, here we go. Timeline slide. Mingus was born in 22. In 1952, he co-founded Debut Records with Max Roach. And let me just tell you, the reason they founded the label was to debut new artists. So it was artists who were having trouble getting picked up on a major label. Max and Charles co-founded this label so that they could pick those new and upcoming artists to debut them.
And the fact that he wanted to get away from the commercialization of the current record labels.
So my question then is, why didn't he just release all of his stuff on his own label? That way he could do whatever
That's
he wanted.
a lot of work, brother.
Didn't have the limitations of Columbia telling him that he couldn't put the lyrics into Fabulous.
A lot of work.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers that question because that's kind of the way
passion came out. I might as well be Mingus Jr.
That's the reason I kind of put it on the timeline anyways, to be able to pose that question. If you have your own studio, why don't you just cut your own music?
Matt,
but you answered it.
For the listeners, why didn't he keep the label? That was my opinion, and it's probably wrong. But tell us what you know about Mingus Debut Records not continuing forward.
Please chime in. Yeah, leave us a comment.
Yeah, please.
And by the way, while you're there, like and subscribe to the channel.
Make sure you get the notification bell. Ding. All right, 1959.
All right. 1959 was the year this album was released, of course. And then in 1979, his last work was with Joni Mitchell on an album called Mingus. I did listen to that album this week. I just took a few notes. I'm personally not a huge Joni Mitchell fan, but you got Jocko on bass, you got Herbie Hancock on piano, Peter Exer on drums, and the fabulous Wayne Shorter on saxophone. So I spent the 49 minutes listening to Joni sing. I love the tracks. He didn't actually get to finish the work with this group, so it was released posthumously. He didn't get to fine tune it like he would have liked. So the album sounds kind of unfinished, but it's still great work. Still great work. I mean, anytime you get to listen to Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock play together, forget about it. I mean, just forget about it. I'm in heaven. 1979 is the year Mingus passes. So just these small little facts of the dash in between the start and the finish. There's so much more to talk about Charles Mingus. So let's move on to the information slide. Some of the few influences that I found this week, and you referenced these just a little bit on the beginning of the episode: church-related music, Duke Ellington, his bass instructor, Red Callender, and then, of course, Charlie Parker was a huge influence on the way that he wrote and the way that he sounds. So even though he's not a saxophone player, Charles, of course, is the bass player, but Charlie Parker, he was just such a big influence on so many people's lives. So, and I'm surprised we haven't heard him on the list yet, but maybe he'll be coming up. What do you think?
Man, I hope so. We're at number 8.
I know.
Charlie Parker hasn't been here yet.
Nope.
I'm gonna smack somebody across the face. I made the last episode without a T-shirt on. How'd you say that?
I think that's what I said.
We better see Charlie Parker for everybody's benefit.
That's funny.
It's on.
It's on. Yep. All right. Mingus's discography. He's got 51 studio releases and 34 as a sideman. I'm sure he's got many more works besides that. Those are just the two that I like to highlight, the studio and the side. So there you go. Genre that Mingus is listed in. Honestly, you could just about pick any genre of music. On his wiki page, there are several genres listed. I just put 3 on here: bebop, hard bop, and post bop. So, this 59 album, it fits right into those categories. I just love it so much.
There's strings, there's classical, and you're right. You could fit it into any one of those. I want to note here. Go ahead.
He wrote extreme albums too. So the crossover, the orchestra, and the jazz. Go ahead.
I was going to mention in 53, we were talking about the new record label, the Quintet, which featured Mingus, unless you're going to talk about it later. It was Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Max Roach, and Mingus. The Quintet, Jazz at Massey Hall from 1953. Just, that bebop, hard bop, drop them all right there and say, let's go. Let's have
Yeah.
some fun.
Yeah.
Jazz at Massey Hall. And that was The Quintet.
Okay. Thanks. 6 Degrees, real easy this week. Mingus played with Miles Davis quite a bit. So they did a lot of collaborations together.
Side note, can I borrow a side note real quick?
Let's do it.
I found it most interesting that last year.
He said keep it short.
Okay, then I won't talk. Not last year. Last week we did Bitches Brew, Miles Davis. The producer of that album was Tio Macaro. Tio Macaro. He was the one that cut and spliced all of these things together for Bitches Brew. He was also the producer of this album. So when we hear the cuts, when we hear the takes, Tio was it. Teomacero. Tio was it. The reason I bring his name up for 6 Degrees is that he was a sideman with both Charles Mingus and with Miles Davis. And I found that most interesting that the music producer for Bitches Brew and Mingus was also a sideman for them in their years.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What did he play?
He was, what did I say, saxophone player.
Saxophone. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks.
He also produced, by the way, Time Out.
By Dave Brubeck.
Dave Brubeck,
Okay.
which was Columbia, the artistry of both this album and Brubeck.
Yeah.
Small little world in there.
That's an awesome fact. Thank you for bringing that. Let's talk about a few facts of Charles Mingus. The trombone and the cello were his first instruments. As you kind of alluded to at the beginning of the episode, classical music wasn't going to end up being for Charles, but he could cross over learning the cello, cross over to the bass and just do the stand-up bass, use the same technique and come out just fine in the jazz industry. He couldn't sight read music fast enough to make the local orchestra as a kid, so he did not make the orchestra. Now, for those of you who are coming from a non-musical background, sight reading music is not easy. It's not like picking up a book that you've never read before and reading the first chapter. You know, sight reading music is hard. It is very hard. Even for professional musicians, it's hard. Well, not for Lady D, but for everyone else, it's hard.
She's got no notes to read. Drumstick, 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 cymbal, cymbal, drumstick. They don't even worry about what key they're playing in.
That's right.
No offense
That's
to the
right.
drummers out there.
No, no offense at all.
You got it all wrong, Bucko. You got it all wrong.
Pick the key based on the drums, right?
That's it. In the key of
Drums.
snare.
So found that fact interesting that as smart and intuitive and as hard as he worked, he couldn't sight read music fast enough. And it's not something, I mean, you really have to practice at sight reading music, and a lot of people do not do it because it is just frustrating. It's so frustrating. I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to the next fact. At a young age, as you alluded to earlier, he started composing his own music, and I found it interesting that that he would come back to his earlier works, compose it a little better, and then turn it into songs that he released. So, you know, it's funny. I wrote this song when I was 13. You know, I'm 30 now. Let's redo it and make it a better song and release it. So, I don't know. I just found it very interesting. Final fact about Charles Mingus: he toured with Pops in 1943.
And Kid Ory, which was
I mean-
part of that. Right? I'm blown away by that.
How could you be angry touring with Pops?
Right?
Maybe he didn't get angry until later.
Maybe.
Okay. All right.
But he did also write and played with Lionel Hampton in the 40s,
Uh-huh.
in 47 and 48. And I find that most interesting too. Where did you start? I can't read music, so I'm going to write music. I'm not black enough to be a black man. I'm not white enough to be a white man. I'm not either of them enough to be Mexican in L.A. So I can't sight read, and they're not going to put a black man in cello in a classical composition anyways.
Nope.
So I just going back to his passion, I've clawed my way through this, and I want it to be the way I want it. But you've had a chance to play with Pops? I mean, come on.
Right.
And then the list of million other people that he's played with from that moment on. I have mad props for him.
Oh, I do too.
I really
I do.
do. So
I do.
Mingus, I didn't mean
Okay.
to.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah, let's talk about the album. Just finish these facts up, and that'll finish my portion of the slideshow. In 2013, this album, Mingus won the Grammy Hall of Fame. So it is a Grammy Hall of Fame winner. The album was written to extend the tribute to his ancestors. So again, I don't get the tribute to the ancestors in the music. I don't get the reflection of the ancestors. Maybe some of you do. I just don't get it. I love the album. Don't get me wrong. The original album was edited, like we mentioned earlier, to take out the bass solos so that he could re-release the album with the bass solos in to earn a little extra dough. Buy low, sell high, and take a piece of that pie. He took all kinds of pieces of the pie because he figured out ways to re-release stuff. So I just love that fact. In 1979, the unedited version was released. 2003, the National Recording Registry, Library of Congress, decided that it was a good enough album to preserve. So it was 2003 when it was inducted for preservation.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the title of the album real quick before we get into our discussion, because we're running a little long.
Yeah,
but
we are. Well,
you told me to look at it this week, and we talked a little bit on Friday, or maybe it was Friday. So tell me about it. Tell me, what did you find?
Either of you look at it?
I did. I have it right in front of me.
I found it most interesting, and that's when you corrected me earlier. It's Mingus When you're learning a new language, you learn the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. You don't use in some languages the female pregnant cow. You assume that the cow who's pregnant is a female, so the neuter version is a generic version. You're looking at it on Wiki right now. So Mingus, Minga, Mingum.
Yep.
Masculine, feminine, neuter. And so those three different Mingus is the masculine version, Mingus.
Yep.
Minga would be the feminine.
Yep.
Mingum would be the neuter version of it. So it's that translation of different languages. And I found that most interesting because I just kept thinking, where am I going with this?
A year ago when we did the album, I always thought it was Mingus. I'm here. Look at me.
Yep.
And it wasn't until this year where I really looked at the title. Dad, what do you got?
Nothing about the title. Just
you're not going to drop any Latin on us?
No.
E pluribus unum.
Maybe Yokedo, Taco Bell, maybe.
And this is what hit me, Matt. It's in the first paragraph on Wiki for Mingus.
Yeah,
it talks about that Latin
declension, right?
Declension. It is declension. Yeah. Dad, all right. That wraps up the info. How's that? Get into some discussion, because Matt and I have already had ours. I feel like I'm done discussing it. I want to know what you think.
I don't want to get into my week in music, but when I did have opportunity to listen to this album, I was enthralled with it. It's like I could not get enough of it. And I waited for the next track. I just kept anticipating this movement, this flow, this emotion, this energy that was coming through the music on this album. I loved the album. And again, I didn't take or have much opportunity this week to absorb it. But when I did listen to it, I was just blown away. Mingus is top shelf to me. He is just top dog. He's got it all. And of course, Danny, the drummer, Richmond. Oh man, he's just so good. And we've listened to other good drummers, and I'm sure we're going to talk about one
In particular.
upcoming.
Yeah, today is 10:27 as we sit to record this.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we'll get to that.
Yep,
Yeah.
in just a bit.
So-
Dad, let me ask you: are the tunes recognizable? Do you think in the future, if you put your music on shuffle and a tune from this album came up, do you think you'd be able to remember, hey, this is a Mingus tune? You not even knowing what the name of the tune is, just hearing it.
Yeah,
You
I
do?
think I would.
Okay.
I think I would. Because the music is that recognizable. That's a good question. Should that be one of our criteria to judge, to rate and evaluate?
Well, early on our episodes, we used to talk about that quite a bit. Recognizable. How recognizable is it? Because that's what's important to me. I play this game with myself where I turn my phone on, music on shuffle, turn my phone over, and then wait to see if I can figure out who it is based on the tune without looking at any information. I love that little game for me because I want to be the guy sitting in the theater. The song comes on, and I say, that's Charles Mingus Pork Pie Hat. And everyone around me says, wow, how'd you know that? It's just,
Because it was on the 1959 album,
Right.
Mingus I mean, why don't you know that?
I want to be that guy. So that's important to me. But
Everybody knows this. Why don't you know it?
the recognizability factor for me is always important. So I like your answer. I think you probably would be able to recognize it.
Yeah. And you guys for sure would be able to recognize it. You guys are so practiced and in tune with where you are with each. I would say each of the artists that you've been with over the last 2 years, practically 2 years. So there may be one or two that you might struggle with, but I would say 95% of the time you would be able to say, that is,
Yeah.
yeah. So good.
All right. Are you ready to rate? What rating would you give this album with your criteria?
Brothers, I'll tell you, I had no trouble giving this album a solid 10. There's just no trouble at all. This album, every track, like we said at the beginning, we could pick any track and highlight any portion of the track, every one of them. The creativity, the blending and the balance. Who was I talking to? Or I listened to somebody about marriage. About marriage. This is a blending of two souls coming together and blending and balancing each other. That it works to, I'm not going to say perfection in marriage, but it works to two sides of yin and yang coming together, making sense. So it was not hard for me to score this a 10. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the album. Yeah.
Matt?
Okay. Well, it meets all of our criteria. The craftsmanship, it's Mingus Craftsman all the way. The awareness, I can hear the recording is very, very good. The creativity is off the charts, in my opinion. It's the spirit of the album this week that caused me not to be able to go all the way to a 10. So again, you think of the Fables of Fabus is a song that I get the complete opposite feeling of what it's written for. You know, I do get the feeling of the Byrds in the Calling of the Birds song that I picked. The emotion for me was way up there this week. It was way up there last year when we covered it on our personal journey. I gave this album a 9. I would change my score though this year.
I was going to ask you that next.
Just how many times I've listened to it this past week. And like you, Dad, wanting more and more and more, wanting to listen to it again, almost feeling guilty because I'm not listening to it. I'm listening to something else this week. But again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I don't have to fill up on Mingus this week because I can listen to it. This album, we haven't said this in a while. This album did pierce my soul. That's how good it was. Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. I don't want to give up my pork pie hat, but I'm not going to. But I love that song. All right, Drew, tell me what you thought.
You know, it's interesting because all of the criteria is met. To me, the spirit of it was that in '59, when there are major protests through jazz musicians about what's going on in desegregation, all of that being said, the one man who I would have expected to be really ugly in his protest chose to make fun of the governor. And it was on the Candid label that he released it with the lyrics on it. So out of all things, it was a mockery of who Phoebus was. It wasn't the angry man speaking out. And we've covered a vocalist, Nina Simone, who got very adamant and very vocal, and it cost her her career about that. So for me, the spirit of it was a mockery of what is going on. Are you serious? And so this jackass, this mule moving down the road to me is kind of what that is. Is this guy really serious, or is he lost? And you listen to the lyrics. Has he lost his mind? He must have lost his mind. Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. I love the song. Everything about the 9 tracks that I listened to, and then Mingus Dynasty later, figuring out that the legacy that came out included those 2 albums. I would listen and did this week to a lot of Mingus's work. Now, I don't know why, Matt. I gave it a 9.5. I couldn't go to 10. I think at the time when we both listened to this almost a year ago, 10 months ago, something else was going on. I'm not sure what we were recording. I'm not sure what my day in life was like then. However, why not? And I think that because my notes were blank on it, it just said, look at these 2 albums. They were almost a dry run for Mingus. I don't know.
I was on a cruise last year at this time. So my week was listening to this out. Maybe that's why I didn't take it to a 10, because I was on a cruise. I had so much other activity going on.
Maybe. So 9.5 is what I gave it. Dad, your week. Go ahead.
Let me say, this last week was difficult for us, and I needed something, Mingus, to kind of touch my soul, so to speak, and bring me back down to some semblance of reality. And I think this album did that for me. And I played a couple of tracks for Mom this afternoon, and she actually appreciated and recognized the value of this album. So yeah, I didn't have any trouble giving it a 10.
Well, of course, we're talking about the old album from 1959. You picked another banging album this week for What's New. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what's new this week?
What's new?
Hey, I have no problem telling you what's new this week, because here's another. I say this practically all the time. I love this album. I love the musicians, and their impeccable quality. None other than Bradford Marsalis, and it's the Belonging album.
Yep.
It was released this year. In fact, March of this year, March 25. And one of the interesting things about this, and unfortunately, I got a phone call when I was about ready to listen to the interpretation, the Keith Jarrett album that came out in 74. So I did not get a chance to put that in my ears, and I basically ran out of time. I'm going to go back and listen to the Keith Jarrett album, because this is an interpretation that Bradford and his group does. Yeah, it's just got everything on it. This is called Belonging. It was a Blue Note album, and it was released, again, I said that, March of this year.
5, yep.
And it's only 63 minutes long. It's not long enough. It's not long enough. You just want to hear more of it and more of it and more of it. It just flows so well. And it was recorded, I believe, in Ellis Marsalis' Center for Music, and none other than Nolens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that itself, each of these tracks, by the way, was written by Keith Jarrett.
Mhm. Yeah,
So-
it is a song for song interpretation of
Yeah.
of Jared's album.
Yeah.
So, Drew, did you get a chance to listen to it?
Yes. Well, I think that we did put on What's New about 30 weeks ago, which would have been just shortly after it released.
Uh-huh.
I did find my notes on it. Just wow, more wow. I
Yeah.
love this thing. So yeah, to turn it back on this week, when you said, "Hey, have we covered this?" I'm like, "Yes, and we will do it again." This
I-
album is worth doing twice.
I would anticipate that the next time Jazzwise magazine comes out, this album could very well be on the list.
Ooh. I'm feeling a prediction. Johnny Carson used to do the envelope. I feel a prediction coming on. I like it.
I do too.
John,
It should
John,
be.
John, you better put it on the list.
It
It's
should
that
be
good.
on your radar.
Yep.
Yep, it's that good.
Okay. All right. I like it. I did. Actually, I gave it a 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's my rating of the album anyway. So thank you for doing that. Now you're already warmed up. Tell us about your weekend music.
Well, again, I did not have a lot of music in my ears because of what we're going through, and we covered that in a section or an episode a few minutes before this podcast came out. So I did not have a lot of time, it seems, to listen to music this week. There was so much going on. The pressure, the stress, the waiting, the anticipation of getting the whole procedure started. It was emotionally draining for me. And because we were going here, going there, and confronted with one thing, and phone calls, text messages from people who love us and care for us, conversations on the phone. It was a tough week. So I'm limited to this album and the Belonging album. That's where
Doesn't it suck when people interrupt your jazz music listening time?
I know. Imagine what's wrong with some people.
If it wasn't for work, I'd have more time to listen to jazz music.
Yes.
If I didn't need to sleep, I'd have more time for jazz music.
Have mercy. I ignored your call today because I was listening to jazz.
I get it. I would have too.
You know what? We've said it a million times on the episode. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm just glad you got those 2 albums in your ear this week. I'm looking forward to helping Mom put some music on her phone that she can play for you while you lay in bed and recover. You'll be hearing some Pat Metheny for sure because he'll soothe your right to sleep. Not that he's boring, but you'll be hearing SBR and Svensson Trio. You'll be hearing some Gregory Porter coming up. So to help you rest and recover as you go through your procedure.
Good.
Cool. Let me do my weekend music, and then Drew, you've got something special to end with. I could not get enough Charles Mingus this week. I did the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady again. Of course, I had to. The Mingus album, of course, the one that we're talking about. Mingus, he just came out this week. Mingus at Monterey. So I had to listen to Mingus at Monterey.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked about the Joni Mitchell album called Mingus that he did in '79 with Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Jocko on bass, and Peter Extra on drums. I'm still on my Coltrane journey, and I mentioned Bags and Train. Now that Bags and Train is Milt Jackson on the vibes and John Coltrane.
Yeah.
Two of the greatest musicians. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear more John Coltrane. But I listened to that. I was in a funky mood today, so I put in some Roland Kirk.
Whoa.
Yeah, he played a trio all by himself.
Me, myself, and I.
Me, myself, and I
got a
trio.
horn here, and a horn here, and a horn in my nose.
That's right. I, of course, did some Pat Metheny this week. Letters from Home, one of my favorite albums. Is such a beautiful album. So we were at Cedar Point on Saturday. I didn't get much jazz music in my ear on Saturday. I did listen to a couple of Coltrane albums on the way to Cedar Point. Keaton was driving on the way, and I was driving on the way home. So, and then of course at Cedar Point, you're just inundated with sounds and sights and smells and rides and everything else. So we had a great day at Cedar Point. So that's basically my week. Just couldn't get enough Mingus. Drew, how about you?
You know, it's interesting because I called you midweek and said I'm musically it's music sweats, like the meat sweats. I've had too much music. I'm bloated. I gorged on some serious Mingus this week just because I wanted to get more of who I now understand. What did his compositions come through like? And to hear him play the piano was phenomenal. To hear him with strings, phenomenal. The blues, hard bop, I loved it. So to me, that week was that. And of course, I've been working on Goodbye Pork Pie Hat for the last couple of weeks. I want to get the timing right. So when you mentioned sight reading, we're doing a lot of that with big band charts now. And so that's been really crushing my mind and my spirit because I think I can play Goodbye Pork Pie Hat until you set your metronome on it. And then you realize there's some really unique, in the bridge type, there's some unique stuff. So for me, it's been an interesting week, both playing music and listening to music. It's been a super great 7 days. So I was just hit my phone thinking, how many albums did I go through? Looking back, you got to listen to the album before this and listen to the album after it. Mingus Dynasty, because that's the legacy album. And then you start paying attention to Mingus Plays the Piano, Black Saint Center Lady, Mingus. And then The Clown and Modern Jazz Symposium, which had lyrical stuff into it. And then the sound effects from Pithecanthus erectus. And I'm like, holy cow. So I can't find the rest of my list right now, but I'm like, how many more did I really get into this week? I happen to be, and I want to bring up the name here because I will put a picture of the screen up, because of my love for Charles Mingus this week. And of course, I'm a big fan of Monk's Jazz here in town. I came across a 2-year-old YouTube video where the UT staff, University of Texas Jazz Department, was doing a concert and brought up some students. And the bass player, who is somebody that I've met before, wasn't playing bass. And I'm like, who's this cat sitting in? I've never met him. I've never seen him. His name is Brian Broomberg. He is a bass player. And I'll send a link. It's in the description below for the Monk's Jazz. Brian plays towards the end of the hour and 20-minute jam session. He plays one of the most amazing bass solos. And when I heard him play, that's when I immediately went back to Fables of Fabus. I want to hear how Mingus did that, and then I want to hear. I've grown really passionately in love with bass players. The stand-up, I love Jacko. That electric's cool, but the stand-up bass, phenomenal. So yeah, that's it. Now we wanted to end on a different note. I think we're about to wrap up before we say fairly well. Today we've got notification that an amazing drummer has passed away. Jack DeJohnette. And we'll keep it short, but one of the things that we here at the Unconnoisseur channel have been doing, and Dad, you called us on this, we love who we're listening to, and will it be recognizable? Is it something that should stand out? And you pick apart these names along the way. Who's playing the bass on it? Well, Mingus is a bass player, so we kind of get that. But often the non-labeled musicians don't ever really see the credit line. And you forget how many incredibly talented musicians are out there. We talk about Ron Carter on the bass a lot. But Jack DeJohnette had been a drummer on many albums. And so tonight, as we close, I just want to look back at the top 100 albums that we've gone through so far to recognize his brilliance. Starting, I'll read this in closing. Today marks another sad day in jazz, the loss of Jack DeJohnette on this mortal plane. Though he moved to a new place, his music and legacy will for sure carry on. My thoughts and prayers, of course, go out to the family and the friends who have had many years with Jack. On our journey over the last 2 years, we've had an opportunity to meet Jack DeJohnette and be able to listen to his brilliance and talent on the drums. We first encountered Jack on number 86, the self-titled album Michael Brecker. That was from 1987, and that was our real first introduction to the man Jack. Next, we saw him on number 77, Herbie Hancock, in the album The New Standards from 1995.
Oh, what a great album.
Great album. Next, we had an opportunity to see him again. We really, and for me personally, I got to know who he was on number 58, Charles Lloyd's The Forest Flower. That was live at Monterey. What an incredible opportunity to meet him, if you will, through his music and through the stories of what you read online. But then, to nobody's surprise, he drops at number 31 again with Pat Metheny on the album 8081. Then, just 2 weeks ago, shaking the whole world up from 1969 and 70, he's at number 9 on Miles Davis's Bitches Brew. We've seen him throughout the years as he develops, as he grows, as he plays, and his sound has definitely left an impact in the jazz world. It's interesting, Matt, that I've never listened to, well, I lied, I did listen to one album. I didn't ever listen to him as a leader. And if you look at Wikipedia and his discog, that thing's a mile long as a leader. And then you look at the mile long as a sideman. And the album I did listen to, Music We Are, was a Danilo Perez and John Patitucci. That trio was phenomenal. Here's a quick list of things that we've also talked about on this show. Double W, the Kenny Wheeler one. I just love that. It's Kenny Wheeler. I'm a big fan of him now. Miles live at the Fillmore, which came out right after Bitches Brew. Matt, Song X.
Yep.
Pat Metheny.
With Pat Metheny. Yep. Doing Ornette Coleman.
Yep. And then Michael Brecker had 2 other albums that we've touched on through this 90 weeks. Tales from the Hudson from Michael Brecker and Pilgrimage, Michael's last album. Charles Lloyd, Dreamweaver, came out that same time period as Forest Flower. Supernova, Wayne Shorter, I mean, come on. Straight Life by Freddie Hubbard, do tell. And then, of course, John Sermon's duet with Jack DeJohnette was The Adventures of Simon Simon. Jack has how many decades of music, Matt?
50 years of playing music. His sideman gigs are longer than my arm, just from the year that he started until I was born in 1970.
Yeah.
He started recording his sides in 1965, and between that and 1970, the year I was born, he's got a list longer than my arm. And then all of the music that he did in between, oh my gosh. He's going to be missed. He's going to be sorely missed.
Yep. Phenomenal 5 decades of music from Jack DeJohnette.
Thank you for doing that tribute to Jack. Let me introduce next week artists, and then we'll say goodbye.
All right.
Next week, number 7 on our countdown. Dad, I hope that you're feeling good enough to be here. I pray that you're well enough. But if you're not, I think Drew and I can handle Thelonious Monk. The name of the album, Brilliant Corners. It's Thelonious Monk on piano. We got Clark Terry on trumpet, Ernie Henry on alto sax, Sonny Rollins on tenor sax, Oscar Pettiford and Paul Chambers on the bass, Max Roach on the drums. It was recorded in 1956 on the Riverside label. Thelonious Monk, Brilliant Corners. Put it in your ear this week so you can tune in next week and hear our discussion about Theo.
So, Dad, I hope you get a chance to listen to it.
Thank you.
As you come into the next few days, may peace be with you.
Yeah. And of course, any notes that you make, send over to one of us. If you're unable to join, of course, we will read through your notes and tell your score with great pleasure. So, and we will miss you.
I already have one or two albums to recommend for.
For what's new?
Yeah,
I love it.
He still won't tell us where he's coming up with them, punk. But I love you.
If it's
Oh,
my,
wait a
if it's,
I
if
don't want to
it,
call him a punk.
I'm not a punk. I'm not a punk. If it's my choice for what's new, it's going to be Jeremy Ledbetter, Gravity.
yeah, of course.
That's
All
funny.
right.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for hanging
night.
out until the end.
Thank you.